Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This short video is a reply to an objection raised against Imam Ahmad Raza Khan Brailwi, rahimahullah ta'ala, the great reviver of the Ummah, the Imam of Ahlul Sunnah.
But look now, look what he says. He attributes something now which is no longer love. This is now actually blasphemy to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says, Agar uluhiyat ata farmana bhi zere qudrat hota, Zurur ye bhi ata farmata. But then he says, if giving divinity, uluhiyya means what you call, you can say godhood, divinity, being a lord. Uluhiyya means being a lord, being the God, being the Almighty, being the one worthy of worship. If giving uluhiyya was part of the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah most definitely would have given uluhiyya to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He says, Allah most definitely would have given uluhiyya to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Uluhiyya means what we call khudai. Khudai, correct? Godhood, divinity. Allah, he's saying, Allah most definitely would have given uluhiyya to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But because it's not a part, it doesn't come under Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never gave it. But He would have definitely given this. Now my brothers, I ask you, is this loving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Is this loving Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as wanted by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
In his Malfuzat Sharif, volume 2, page 179, which is a secondary work, by the way, somebody else recording the statements of the great Imam, and it is not a primary work, not from the tahqiqat, the written works of the great Imam by himself. Anyhow, in the second volume on page 179, it is mentioned, Agar uluhiyat ata farmana bhi zere qudrat hota, zarur ye bhi ata farmata. If giving divinity was within the divine power of Allah, then He would definitely have granted it to the Prophet ﷺ. I.e., if making someone else a god was within the power of Allah, then He would have made the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ a god. This is a conditional statement based on a condition which is impossible. This is known as ta'liq bil muhal. In other words, if making someone else a god was within the power of Allah, this condition is impossible because this is not within the divine power. Therefore, He will not make anyone else a god. Why? Because it is impossible. Now, what Usman Deobandi, the ignoramus, failed to do was to read the words which came after this very statement. What is mentioned? Jaise irshad huwa law aradna an nattakhidha lahwan lattakhadnahu min ladunna in kunna fa'ilin. The verse from Al-Quran Al-Kareem is quoted here by Imam Ahmad Raza Khan rahimahullah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah 21 verse 17, if we intended to take a son, then we would have taken one from ourselves if we intended to do so. Agar hum beta chahte to zarur apne paas se. Agar hame karna hota. Ala Hazrat Imam Ahmad Raza then mentions, Goya irshad hota hai, ए नसरानियों तुम मसीह को और यहूदियों तुम उज़ैर को और अरब के मुशरिकों तुम मलाइका को हमारी औलाद ठहराते हो. हमें अगर अपने लिए बेटा बनाना होता तो इन्हीं को ना बनाते जो सबसे ज्यादा हमारे मुकर्रब हैं, यानी मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम. In other words, Allah is addressing the Jews and the Christians, saying, O Christians, you make Prophet Isa alayhi salam my son, and O Jews, you make Prophet Uzair alayhi salam my son, and O idolaters of the Arabs, you make angels my children. if indeed I was to take a son, then would I not make the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam my son, the one who is the most closest to me sallallahu alaihi wasallam? So you see, this was a conditional statement, and it was based on a premise, a condition which is totally impossible. This is known as ta'liq bil muhal, which not only occurred in the words of Imam Ahmad Raza Khan, but has occurred in the Holy Qur'an. The verse from the Qur'an is mentioned here. And not only does it occur in the Holy Qur'an, it also occurs in the blessed Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, based on something, a condition which is impossible. Can such a statement be blasphemy? No. If such a statement of Imam Ahmad Raza Khan is blasphemy, then the accusation of blasphemy of Usman Deobandi falls against the Holy Qur'an. Let's see what Imam Qurtubi rahimahullah mentions under this verse quoted by Imam Ahmad Raza. Imam Qurtubi mentions, لو أردنا أن نتخذ ولدا على طريق التبني لاتخذناه من عندنا من الملائكة وما لإلى هذا قوم لأن الإرادة قد تتعلق بالتبني فأما اتخاذ الولد فهو محال والإرادة لا تتعلق بالمستحيل ذكره القشيري. If we intended to take a son, then indeed we would have taken one from amongst ourselves, from the angels. And Imam Qurtubi mentions, many inclined towards this understanding, because the irada, the divine will of Allah, is connected to taking a son here. And taking a son is impossible for Allah. And the divine will of Allah is not connected to those things which are impossible. This is mentioned by Al-Qushayri. Now, what we understand here is that just like the divine power of Allah is not connected to impossible things, the Deobandis believe it is. The Deobandis say Allah can lie, Allah can have a child, Allah can commit oppression, and so on. All kinds of absurdities. This is a wrong belief. The belief of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that the divine power of Allah and even the divine will of Allah is not connected to impossibilities. So, this verse of the Qur'an is just like another verse of the Qur'an, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِيَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَا, that if indeed there was a God besides Allah in the heavens and the earth, then there would be chaos in the heavens and earth. In other words, this condition, if there was another God, this is something which is impossible. So, when something impossible is mentioned in a conditional statement, then the result will also be impossible. And if these statements are taken to be blasphemous, as Usman Deobandi says, then his accusation of blasphemy falls against the Holy Qur'an. Astaghfirullah. Let's turn to the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam famously mentioned, لَوْ كَانَ بَعْدِي نَبِيٌّ لَكَانَ عُمَرٌ. If there was a prophet after me, it would be Umar. And what do we say of this hadith sharif? Similarly, it is based on a condition which is impossible. It is ta'liq bil muhal. If there was a prophet after me, which is impossible, then it would be Umar. Now, is this statement blasphemous? According to Usman Deobandi, this statement is a blasphemy.
This is the way Isa alayhi salam is loved by the Christians. This is the way Isa alayhi salam is loved by the Christians.
This statement is blasphemous according to him. Astaghfirullah al-Azim. By accusing the conditional statement of Imam Ahmad Raza Khan based on a condition which is impossible. Usman Deobandi accuses this statement of being blasphemy. His accusation of blasphemy falls against the Holy Qur'an, against the blessed Hadith, and he does not understand. Such is his ignorance. If he had read a simple work like Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani, he had studied Balagha, he would have known that in Ilm al-Badi' this falls under the category of Ta'kid al-Madh, the emphasis of praise. When in Arabic language you are praising someone, this form of ta'liq bil muhal, suspending a statement with something which is impossible. This occurs, and it has occurred many times and many occasions within the Quran, within the Hadith. This is rife in the Islamic literature. So, I would like to challenge Usman Deobandi. You claim that the statement of Imam Ahmad Raza Khan rahimahullah ta'ala is blasphemy. According to you, according to your standard, the Holy Quran has blasphemy. The blessed Hadith has blasphemy. You must answer this, and you must rectify yourself and make tawbah for this blasphemous accusation you have made, which falls against the Quran and even the Hadith of Allah Ta'ala and His Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We ask Allah to guide these people and to protect the Ahlul Sunnah from their misguidance.